two people.
Now we're supposed to be seeing all the three of us, right? So I see both of you. Do you see each other and myself?
Yes, I can see both
I
of
can
you.
I can see you, yes.
Good.
Can you hear everything?
This is weird.
Can you hear everything?
Sorry, yes, it's brilliant.
Okay.
So it's working exactly as it's supposed to. I can even see myself.
Yeah, sure.
Good.
Right.
Which isn't a pretty sight. It's not something I look forward to at the moment.
Okay, but you
Right. But right. So do we have the questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I need to start with Anya because I'm working, if you like, chronologically in order through Clive James's book on verse. So we start with the earliest quote and work through. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, which I mean, what do I mean? I've got
You've got something different from Anya.
Okay.
So her question was whether in a formal poem or in a formal one, everything depended and still depends on the quality of the moment. And I put a quote there of an example of a moment, and it's spring when the world is puddle wonderful, from E. Cummings' poem that I love. And the question so everything depends on the quality of the moment. Identify a moment in Japanese maple which you might call a quality moment. Explain why in your view it is a quality moment. Actually, I should have got Anya to tell you all that. I will step back from now on. Anya, over to you.
So shall I repeat the question to Lena?
Yeah.
The point was that there is this concept of the quality of the moment, which
I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Try again, Anya.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, at the moment I can hear.
So the point was that there is this concept of the quality of the moment, which, there is an example of such in another poem, and it's spring when the world is puddle wonderful. So my task was to find one, concept or approach, or I don't know, what do you call it, like maybe something, which I find similar to the one in the example, in the poem by Clive James. So I assumed it was this one. As dark descends, this glistening illuminates the air. So I chose that one as the moment, and I'm supposed to explain why this is a quality of moment. So I think it's because through the one brief moment, like after the rain, there is this evening, and the dusk descends and everything, and it's getting darker, and there is this quiet glistening, which illuminates the air. So why I find it the quality of the moment is that because this one detail of something illuminating the air equals the genuine emotion of of an autumn evening, or freshness, or I don't know, something more. There's something more to this line than there is technically.
All right.
So
did you get that, Lena?
Yes, mostly.
Yeah,
Mostly.
most of it. Right. Okay. Do you agree with it?
So I didn't quite understand the first example, which was from another poem. What poem was it from? Was it also James's poem or somebody else's?
No, it was A. Cummings.
No.
Ah, it's Cummings. Yeah. Okay.
May I type it down for you? Because syntactically, I think it's hard to understand maybe at once. So may I just show it
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
in concept? So let me just type, and it's English spring. No, sorry, wrong language.
She's typing in Russian.
Okay.
And
But not deliberately so.
yeah. That's it. That was the last 5 words were highlighted.
Ah,
And
okay.
that was the quote of the moment.
Yeah, so it's, you mean the quality of the moment is water.
Interesting perspective.
No, I think the quality of the moment. Well, for me, the quality of the moment is the evocation of spring in the idea of a child's joy in puddles, splashing in puddles.
Why do you think splashing?
Well, I suppose because of the rest of the poem.
Ah, yeah, okay,
About
but
two
we
little
don't have the rest of the poem.
No, but it's 2 little kids in a park. And this sums it all up. Also, I suppose, I mean, it's the alliteration of puddle and wonderful. The repeated vowel sound, and the softness, the sort of puddle wonderful. There's a sort of combination of rhythm and hard and soft consonants. If you're trying to examine it in deep, but in reality, it's all about the way that this encapsulates, if you like, the hope of spring. What Anya's chosen, there may be other modes, but Anya chose a moment in the James poem. As dusk descends, this glistening illuminates the air. First of all, we need to agree, is that a moment? For Anya, it's a moment. Do you think it could be a moment? By a moment, I think what James is talking about is a coming together of language and concept or idea, which has a, if you like, a brightness all of its own, has a beauty of its own, and he talks about energy, an energy of its own that pushes on to other moments, which eventually bind the poem together. For me, the value of that example, it's an interesting one, is that you have 2 counterpointed movements. Dusk descends, glistening illuminates. So you've got something fading and something growing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a countervailing balance of movement within the line of ideas. Now, I mean, we are three adults, each of us coming at the poem with our own cultures, our own ideas, and so on and so forth. So views are valid. And if you disagree, then say so.
Well, if you give more context, yeah, but you've already given more context for coming. I mean, so there it might be a moment, and here it's more like a process, but on the other hand, if by moments it means when the language and the concept meet together and do something together, then it is a moment. Yeah, in the formal sense of the word. Yeah, but they are okay. So once again, what was the question? So what are the moments, or what?
The question was the quality.
I wonder if it...
Uh-huh.
Go on, sorry, Annie.
What's important here? Well, probably I gave too big a line. Maybe the second one is even more crucial because this glistening illuminates the air. Well, it seemed to me to be that very moment when you can feel freshness, and that's why I choose this one as the quality of the moment, because through the light you can feel the others. Well, there are other senses working here.
Yeah, I thought that maybe the crucial difference is that he sees all this through the door, through the glass. So for him, it's not about touch, not about feeling like when you can feel it in your body. Yeah. So for him, it's all confined to sight.
I think all of that's valid. I also think that the dusk descends, of course, is a metaphorical reference to his own fading.
Yes, of course, yeah, well, but as it often happens, the metaphorical references, how to say it, it's not very important that it's a metaphorical reference. It's just, it's important as a reality, as what he says, yeah.
I would differ with you on this because I think the metaphor infuses the whole poem. I think it's one of the linking themes that runs through the poem.
I'm thinking about this word metaphor and this concept, yeah. If you say metaphor, maybe you imply that it is something he's doing on purpose, and he's obsessed with these formalist devices. Yeah, but yes, of course, he says that I had formalist myself. I don't like to. Yeah, okay, it's from my handout. Yeah. Yes, he is a formalist, but I don't think good poems like his are written because of metaphors, but because it's a part of reality which he sees. Yeah, so because it's very, very realistic. Yeah. So he's inside this metaphor. It's not something he uses as a device. This is what I mean. Yet, although it's not very
okay, right.
clever idea.
No, I wasn't assuming that he did use it deliberately. I'm saying it's a metaphor. It just occurs. Right. Okay. I think at this point maybe. Yes, go on, Anya.
Yeah, I need to just confess something, because while studying the whole poem and everything, I watched a video of Clive James reading his poem, sitting on the couch, and being next to those double doors and this maple. So I saw the whole house and the brick wall and everything. So it never occurred to me that he's inside always. So it's just that Lena said that he was inside and there is not much to, feel, except he sees things but not feels them. But I didn't even read this kind of context here because of that video I watched.
Ah, okay, yeah.
It shows you that videos are a bit of a danger.
Yes.
Why? I mean, the video was set up clearly because of the poem.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think about the situation of the man? Here is a dying man, and it's raining. Would he be outside in the rain?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure he wouldn't. He might be inside with his doors open now.
Oh, well. Does it matter whether the doors are open or closed?
Well, maybe, yeah.
That's a question to both of you. Lena's thing.
I thought that because he is dying, he is vulnerable, and maybe because if it's raining and I would suppose that the doors are closed, so he doesn't have any sounds there, so he can only see something. And so here in the second stanza we have this mirror halls. Yeah, it's all about sight. And actually in each stanza it's all about sight, I thought.
Sorry, it's all what?
About sight, about what you see. And
Sight.
Sight.
Sight, what you see.
Yes,
Okay.
what you see.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
thought you were saying.
Yeah.
Thought you were saying sides, as in inside, outside, or which walls on that sort of thing. So no, it's about what is seen. Yes, that's true. I mean, the question is, when did you ever see such a? So yes, it's about what's in the visual
Field.
What he's visually perceiving. Okay, would this be a good point now to move on to Lena's first quote?
Yes, it's from the handout applying James to James. Yes, this is what we're talking about. Yeah. Right. My quote is, as a die-hard formalist myself, I don't like to admit that the unity of a poem, its binding energy, is binding, yes? Binding, sorry,
Binding.
yes, its binding energy might not be the most important, I guess it's a misprint, of its energies, yes?
Yeah, there's lots of misprints I see now.
Yeah.
I do apologise. When I was writing, I was in a fury of creation, and such things as I's instead of O's got and just fell out.
You're forgiven.
So I do apologise.
Yeah.
There are lots of them.
It's okay.
I could re-edit and send you a perfect view, but it would sort of mean a bit of a delay.
Future generations will think about
energies.
this if, yeah. So, might not be the most important of its energies. Okay, the point A is identify the energies that bind Japanese maple. And B is which in your view are the most powerful. I think it's all about very subtle energies, yeah, and so it's an oxymoron. So the energy of fading, the energy of losing something, and actually it is the most powerful. It's melancholic. It's what we call the energy of the born under Saturn, of it's like the energy of losing everything, of losing the energy of life, and it is the most powerful here, I think. And what did you think, Anya?
The task was to find the line. Is it for the moment?
No, not the line. Yeah.
No. It's what energies. He says what. He says that basically what he's arguing is that each of these moments has an energy, and as they link together, they bind the poem together. And that for him, it's a formalist. It's the way that these energies, from moment to moment, bind together, that is the most important in the poem. But then, being a true academic, he goes, but that may not be true. Might be other energies which are more important. So, I'm saying, so my question to Liena was, identify the energies she thinks bind the poem, that tie the poem together. Energies is plural, so there might be more than one, or there might not. And from what I'm understanding, let me tell me if I've got this wrong, misunderstood. But from your point of view, the sort of common energy through it is the energy of, do you say it's oxymoronic, of losing energy, of the failing of strength.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
The failing of physical power, if you like, to do things.
Yes, yeah, and I can add that the second energy connected with this, it's there is nowhere here the word spiritual, but I mean something unknown which grows up and which develops, and becomes when you lose all this, and eventually you lose life, and something else grows. Because so a final flood of colors will live on as my mind dies, burned by my vision of a world that shone so brightly at the last and then was gone. So at the moment of death there is like an explosion, and everything is burned, and it's something new.
Well, okay. Tanya, what do you think?
Yeah, I would add one more energy, which is grasping. I would call it that. So it's when there are some lines here that show that he. I also read this article on Guardian about this poem and about the way people write about death. And there are different approaches to death and everything, and I think there is this acceptance here, and still this probably this grasping. He says, now I take my share, or a final flood of colors will live on as my mind dies. So he also wants to take his share. He wants to see and find out if he will live till the maple tree, the leaves will get red and turn red, and also he wants to just enjoy the sight and the remaining senses, thought and sight remain. enhanced, in fact, so he would enjoy that left with him. He doesn't suffer much from pain or inconveniences which arise, like it's a breath control, it's just uncomfortable. So he is accepting and he is just there to enjoy the brisk moments that remain.
So, what? Jenny, you were going to say something?
Yes, I see your point. Yes, and I think yes, I would say so, but I thought that in the first stance it's an understatement. It's just it's not just uncomfortable. Yes, it's of course it's a terrible situation, and maybe it feels like something uncomfortable, but actually, if we wanted to put it in other words, yeah, so the situation is terrible, and maybe the opposite, enjoy, maybe we would want to find another word. It's not like enjoy, yeah, it's maybe.
Well, he said he does take joy in, doesn't he? He takes joy in colour, he takes joy in thought, and he takes what he can see.
Okay.
So enjoy, I think, is perfectly valid here.
Okay.
So, can I kind of sum up at this point? Do we feel, as a group, that essentially there are three energies involved? There's the energy of the fading. There's the energy of acceptance, that he accepts that he's going to die. He's not fighting against it. It's not, do not go into that good night rage against the dying of the light. It's not like Dylan Thomas, who's sort of screaming at death and saying, "Go away, leave me alone, I'm not ready yet." He's kind of, throughout the poem, there's a sort of almost a stoical sense of acceptance that this is the end. And is there an energy here that Anya put, and I thought the word grasping is very good, it's quite accurate, the sense of seizing onto anything that holds, go back to your word, and joy, that in a sense there is an appetite he has for life, but all he's got left is what he can see and think. So he's using those to the best of his ability. He's not just going to switch off, go. Things I can enjoy, so I'm going to enjoy them. Is that a fair summation, or?
I still feel that I'm not happy with the word enjoy, but this might be because I haven't read his other poems. Yeah, because if I read more poems, maybe I would feel this anachronistic moment here, which yes, it's just you seize the moment and you enjoy what you can until it's too late. Yeah, and I might see that this is the case, but at the moment I don't feel it. Okay, because
okay, pick the second line of the second stanza.
Yeah, it's. I mean, because it's more about the world than about him. Yeah, while the word enjoy is more about yourself rather than the world. This is what I mean.
So when he says in the line before that, when did you ever see? Who's he talking to?
Well, whoever, maybe himself, and maybe a reader in the sense that the poem is part of his mission of, yeah, it's like I imagine, yeah, part of his mission of being open to the world and sharing this experience, this unique experience, because he's in this situation. But at the same time, yeah, of course, it's common. It's a common experience because everybody's going to die anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
May I
well,
answer?
yeah,
Mhm.
no, but
I mean,
Go
it's
on.
just my basic thought is that in this position, yes, of course, you grasp on things, yeah, and you want to linger whatever is there, and you can't control it, and maybe you don't have much access to the center of enjoying things. Okay?
Anya?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Lena mentioned the world versus himself, like the beauty, the sweet beauty, as when the fine rain falls. The point is that the last line shows that yes, there will be the world afterwards, like the tree will remain, everything will remain, the double doors will, but in fact, the world will also cease to be when he does, because then was gone. You know, the last sentence. So the world kind of partially equals himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just to add this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his perceptions, his sight, his thought.
Yeah. No, the reason I'm smiling is it's really a philosophical issue which that kicks up, which is the issue of how much the world as we know and how much of the world is an objective reality. There are philosophers who believe that the world is simply that we construct the world for ourselves. The whole thing is, in a sense, being played out in our own minds. And that objective, cold, hard, scientific reality is something very different, maybe something very different, because we can never know what it truly is, and we're always filtering it through our senses and perceptions. And that's why I was smiling, because I was thinking, here are three people sitting in three different places, looking at what they perceive to be a common screen, sharing thoughts and ideas, and we might all be delusional. That's my sense of humour, I'm sorry, it intruded. It gets in the way sometimes. Right, shall we move on then to back to Anya?
Yeah, but may I please ask one more thing? It's just going back to the first question I had in my Clive James. Still, could you both offer your qualities of moment in the poem?
Okay. Lena, you go first. For you, what would be a quality moment in the poem? There may be others. I think there's lots of them, but
One word of the for the quality of the moment. Long. It's a long moment.
you mean the poem?
Yes. No, I mean
No,
the
that's
moment is
sort of,
very
you've got to
long.
break it up a little bit. Break it up into the steps.
Well, so he catches himself in this moment when he's confined only to thought and sight, yeah, and inside this moment we have this light fading and light glistening at the same time, yeah, but coming from different sources, and right, and that is it, yeah. And Yeah, I think it's
I think
uh-huh.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, it's the moment is visual, and the moment is uh, mental. No, more mental is the wrong word. Yeah, yeah. It's
Poetic response, I think that's what you're looking for. You said mental, I'm saying a poetic response.
yeah. Well, but poetic response is rather too wide because in Cummings's uh, bottle and wonderful. Of course, it's also a poetic response. Everything is poetic response. I mean,
Yeah, but
yeah.
but it's an
Uh-huh.
enhancement, isn't it? What a poet does is they enhance the language, they enhance the experience, and what you're getting here is that moment of enhancement that's
Yes,
being
it's
expressed in the language.
which doesn't come from him. Yeah. So he.
What comes through him.
Yes, it comes through him. Yeah, because everything else is cut out.
Cut away, I think.
Cut away.
It's like slicing. If you want a mango stone, pure, you have to slice away all that sweet fruit and get rid of it, and then you have the pure stone. And in his case, the analogy is that feeling, physical sensation, is what is lost, and to some extent, also audio experience. There's no suggestion of sounds on the part.
Yes, this is what we were talking about. Yeah. So no sound. Yeah. And
So the mango stone is just simply what he sees, and feels, because he does feel. I mean, it's not a sensation of touch, but he feels. He's emotionally moved by these. Is he not?
not sure again. And which words here, Anya, yeah, and Wayne, yeah. So which words here say about his emotional response? So is it rather meditative, yes, or contemplative response, which is not necessarily emotional? This is what I'm thinking.
I think there's emotional power. So we need to look. Let's look for words that have or moments of language which have emotional power. Third verse, fourth line. So much sweet beauty is when fine rain falls on that old tree and saturates your brick back garden walls. That's very, very powerful language. And that's something that comes, the word saturate in English has an almost physical power to it, because if you're saturated, you can feel the water on your skin. You're not just wet, you're wet through to the skin is wet. If you go out into the rain and you come in and say, I'm saturated, it's, but also, you talk about something being saturated with light. There's so much light there that it overwhelms almost everything else. So it's a very, very powerful word, and the choice of it is almost physical.
Yes, I understand.
So, and that, for me, is if you like, a moment. Saturate your brick back garden walls. It's the going from the fluency of the saturate, which is a flowing piece of language, to things which are short, sharp, hard, single syllable adjectives. So that's And then the amber rooms and mirror halls.
Mm-hmm.
What is he talking about there?
Those are I thought it was something like close to something that connects us to the third stance, because there is amber rooms. Those are very mirrory, very glistening, glimmering spaces where there is a lot of reflection. There is light reflecting. So there is this image of probably the rain making it reflect, just be constantly producing light.
Yeah, amber is a very warm colour. Hang on, but I think, for me anyway, amber rooms and mirror halls is a sort of evocation of somewhere like the Great Hall of Mirrors in Versailles.
Yeah. So it makes you think about palaces. Yeah, not only Versailles.
Yes,
Yeah.
something palatial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So something that takes you. Go on.
I checked some pictures of amber rooms. They were all very glossy, very. There was a lot of reflection, because it wasn't just the color of amber. It was the quality of it that made the rooms interact. The walls interact with each other light-wise. So I don't know the light and the reflection. The reflection being, I think, is the main point here. So this game of light and those leaves turning or red, or having those because those leaves, they have I checked Japanese maple has some sort of trims on the leaves, so this is even some kind of an ombre color, which also is the quality of amber, because it transcends one shade transcends into another kind of. So they are not just the straightening the face colors. They are very ombre colors. So that's also the point. The trees turning yellow, from yellow gradually into orangey red, and then also covered with those teeny tiny drops of rain, making them reflect.
And then they fall off, and then they all fall off, and you have the bare branches. Yes. It's an appropriate poem for this time of year, isn't it? Okay, the other. You asked about other things, and he says ever more lavish. So the side nearly palaces. I think that's very true.
And
I don't think he perceives it as such.
But I just thought that maybe the word emotion isn't very helpful here, just because it's very, very cultural. And so when we think about emotions in poetry, it's going to be very, very different what we understand by this in an Australian poem or in a Russian poem, or in an English poem. Yeah, it doesn't help.
Well, when I think about emotion, the first thing that comes to mind is linguistics. So when we give when we describe a word, we sometimes say it is neutral, or that it is formal, officially is, and sometimes we say that this word can't be used in a formal context because there is some sort of evaluation to it or emotion. So I was thinking technically, formally about emotion.
Yes,
linguistically speaking.
Yeah, but once again, it's a kind of
in which case you're
international.
talking more about connotation.
Yes.
Yeah, and It's just as we are talking about it, we don't know real life reference. Yeah, because I can't imagine his Australian kind of personality, and I don't know how emotional in our sense of this word he is. This is what I mean. Yeah, so it's just
Right, let's stop there for a second. Let's pause, because you clearly have a concept which derives from a Russian perception of the word emotion. If you were going to teach, what is the word for emotion in Russian?
emoция.
Emotion. Okay.
Yes.
That's not not too difficult. If you were going to ask concept questions of a learner, what concept questions would you ask?
Right, is he, I would ask, is he Japanese, Russian, or Australian? And after that, I will get lost because definitely these three nations understand emotion differently, although the linguistic and even the psychological term is international. Yeah, it varies from
Yeah, but what I'm
part
trying to
to
get
part
at
of the world.
is
Yeah.
what do you perceive as the Russian, inverted commas, value of the word?
So there
And
is
in
now.
what way is the Russian perception of emotion different from an English speaker's evaluation of the word or understanding of the word?
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question. Annie, what do you think? And I know what I think. I'm just thinking that the main connotation in Russian is a bit negative. Yeah. So because culturally you are not supposed to be too emotional and so on. Yeah, and emotion in a poem isn't necessarily something very good. And what do you think?
Annie, do you agree with that? In Russian?
So it depends on the period.
Yeah, that's why I'm hiding into connotations here, because it's easy
Yeah.
to find emotional words connotation-wise without bringing that negative aspect, which I haven't thought about first. But yeah, I would say that probably in life, like I'm not taking poetry here, but life, yeah, you're not supposed to be emotional. You have to be reserved rather than emotional about your life. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I think so. It's just in a general sense. Yeah. And if we think about psychological meanings of this word, yeah, it's just we are simply not going there. Yeah, because it's too vast. Yeah, and this is maybe if you think about.
Okay. Can I interrupt you there? Because I think I understand where you're coming from. We have a very clear separation in English, perception of the difference between emotional, the adjective, and emotion, the noun. The adjective is not negative. It's a weighting context. If you say somebody's being very emotional, generally what will indicate is you need to know more. So as to know whether this is too emotional or you have good reason to be emotional. So if somebody's lost their phone and they're screaming and shouting, they're being emotional, and that's negative. An iPhone is not that. Maybe I better not use the iPhone as an example. A mobile phone of low value. If somebody has lost a member of the family and been very reserved, very much in control, and then something happens and they break, and they are being very emotional, then because of the context, the situation, there'd be no negativity in that situation whatsoever. There'd be quite a lot of support in the sense that we understand that this has just got too much, and therefore, you can have space and time to express your emotions. But the emotion simply is a flag of love, hate, whatever. It's totally neutral in English.
Okay.
So when I talk about emotions within the poems, when I use it like that, what I'm suggesting is simply labels.
Yes, but what would be here? I mean it. Yeah, it's my question. Here, what is a better label? Emotion or contemplation? And it depends on his character, and maybe on his national character.
Okay. I think. I'm thinking off the top of my head here, so I could be wrong. I think there are two elements to the poem. I think there's a reflective, not contemplative, but a reflective element. So in a sense, he's outside himself, observing himself inside the situation. So, and you get that in things like breath growing short is just uncomfortable. He knows what it's like to struggle to breathe, but this is not that. And he's making an evaluative comment on his condition. You feel the drain, I feel the drain of energy, but thought and sight remain. So knows, in a sense he understands that his energy is draining, it's becoming less and less and less. But these more cerebral things remain. So he's an observer, he is did I use the word contemplate? Did you?
I did, yes.
You did, yes. In a sense, that is a form of contemplation. But within that contemplation, there is something different. So he's both within the experience and outside the experience. So within the experience, or when the poem takes inside the experience, and he invites you to go in. When did you ever see so much? That's an invitation. Come inside here with me and experience the full glory of what it is that I'm seeing. That's much more not emotional in a Russian sense, but emotive of emotions. He wants us to cerebrally understand the situation, but also to some extent, I think, to experience the language that this experience was generated in him.
Yes, yeah, I understand, yeah, and I can say that I'm happier with this emotive thing rather than emotional, okay?
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Okay. Anya, any thoughts?
Well, no, I think I agree. It's just that no one. Well, you didn't give me your lines for quality moments.
I thought you might bring us back to me. That's
But
fine.
no,
Okay.
So
No. I think it's a valid question. So for me, the lines which really strike, you obviously saturate your brick back garden walls. That for me is a very powerful line. The same one as you identified, the dust descends as glistening illuminates the air, the sort of rise and fall in that. Come autumn and its leaves will turn to flame. And going back to what the more cerebral James, which I can enjoy, that will end the game for me, though life continues all the same. That's cerebral, that's not vivid poetry, but it's the sort of quiet, contemplative man. A final flood of colours will live on, burned by my vision as a world that shone brightly at the last, and then it was gone. Those last two, I think, are beautiful. So for me, those are the moments that kind of run through the poem for me. Although, there are other lines, breath short is just uncomfortable. I think I have a friend who is, as Lena knows, whom I go and visit, who is in a very similar situation to James. And when they also look a little bit similar, except James has all teeth and my friend only has teeth, which makes him quite hideous to look at. It's very funny. But it's a tragic situation. Well, it's not a tragic situation. It's a life situation of another life near its end. Very vivid. And that breath grown short is just uncomfortable. I've seen that working. I've seen that in real life with this person. When he has to have oxygen, and when he puts his oxygen in, breathing is just uncomfortable. When he takes it out, it's a struggle. So I suppose because of what I'm bringing to the poem in terms of my life experience, that line for me has quite a lot of poignancy.
Mm-hmm.
It would, for somebody who hasn't sat there in a room while somebody is struggling to breathe, it would be different. But that's by the by. Okay, right. Now, let's move on to number B, which is back to Anya.
But I didn't quite understand whether this was a question. So number 3 goes like this. Of the former poem could plausibly say that it has a better, not a worse chance of joining the moment up, that its ability to contain them and intensify them with a symmetrical framework and structure becomes a satisfaction in itself. But that's it.
That's the statement.
Yes.
Do you agree? In the context of this. Right, so can I ask you both a question before we move into the substance of the question? Did I send you a copy of each of the other person's quotations and stuff?
I don't think
I did.
No.
No. I rather think next time I should. But what I was trying to avoid was you doing the other person's work
beforehand. Yes, yeah. But
beforehand.
it would be good to stop them at the moment, because I can't hear part of what you are saying. It's just
right. Okay.
So I will send it over to you, my copy.
Yeah, and I'm sending you mine. Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
So yes, I think I agree with this because it's always satisfaction for me to kind of take the poem apart and see what it's made of. Joining the moments, enjoying the alliterations, the rhymes, the rhythm, just looking at it with a magnifying glass. So is that what this is about? It's about formal approach to the poem, right? So for
yes, it is.
It is.
But the question I would widen this out. I mean, within the context of this poem, does it have a formal structure?
A formal structure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what it means, but it has a structure to it, definitely.
Does it have a regular? Does it have a regular rhythm?
Well,
Does
it
it,
does.
does it have a regular rhyme scheme?
It does. Definitely. So,
And does the rhyme scheme repeat throughout the poem, verse by verse? So
yeah,
you stick to it, more or less.
there is this like ABABB formula.
Yeah, there is. And basically but he does play around with rhythm. Because his basic unit is the arm foot. So slow, a fading out, fading out brings no, and then suddenly brings no real pain. You know, that he has tendency to find faults. He doesn't stick with the iambic. He suddenly interrupts it with a simple single beat structure, which I find interesting. But is he right? I mean, if you take a poem, do you know The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot?
In a
Do you
sense,
know
yes, of course, yeah, because it's easy to
The Wasteland
the
by
wasteland.
T.S. Eliot?
I'm afraid I don't.
No, just I'll send you a link right now, okay?
Because when you look at that, there is no rhythm, no rhyme scheme. It's all free verse. What James is to be saying is that the power of the poem, in part, lies in the way its structure reflects its structure of moments. Whereas T.S. Eliot manages to achieve powerful poetry with just moments. He doesn't choose to use the structure. James's argument appears to be that if you take language and compress it within a structure, you create an internal tension that that empowers the language. Whoa!
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't look at it now, Anya. It's a very long poem.
Yes, well, I'll just have a look at a few lines. Well, but I know what you mean about free-falling verbs, because it's often the case with the English language poetry. But here it's very structural.
Yes, it is. It's much more structured.
And it is satisfying, I must say. But it depends on the, I think, on the reader as well.
Right. Now you've each got a copy of question 4, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And the question was identify example of Japanese maple or wood where James uses syntactical tricks to create poetic effects. How the system of the line has changed to transform a prose-like statement into more poetic stressed syntax. Did you work together on this?
I don't think so.
We worked separately, but we could.
Have you talked about it?
No, we didn't have a chance to talk, right? So.
No, we didn't. Yeah, just I just thought about it. We thought about it. Mm-hmm.
And I have a whole list of syntactical devices that I
Devices?
think. Well, is this the word device, or stylistic means that I use here in, well, the syntax specifically?
Yeah. Let me just say, at this stage, within Russian appreciation literature, there is a predisposition to drift towards stylistic, what you call stylistic analysis. And I got a lot of exposure to this when I first came to Russia in 97, sorry. To the point where I, a bit like tea, became, not tea, crop, I became allergic to it. I'm not physically allergic to a crop, but I'm emotionally allergic to it. You put a crop on food and no!
Yeah.
Because you cannot have a meal in a restaurant in Moscow without crop, particularly in not very good restaurants. And I used to eat a lot in cafes and canteens. So, in the same way, I always felt that stylistic devices was something that was used, overused, and so I tend to, I kind of automatically go, no. So syntactical devices is fine. That works beautifully. But as soon as we start talking about stylistic devices, I think it's to do with our university culture. It was a fashion for a period, but it's a fashion that went out of fashion with postmodernism in the 1980s, and has never come back. So, okay, sorry, it's not your fault.
It's quite kicking in universities, especially foreign language departments.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and I just can't.
I think they date back to the
Which is
page. So.
Yeah. It's my problem. It's not your problem. Right. Let's get back to the question. Examples of syntactical structure you think from syntactic devices used in the poem that you've identified, Anya. Okay, can you give us some? And Leanna. Leanna. Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just that you've gone from half the screen down to a little picture.
Oh, really?
That's okay. I'll promote you to a big picture when you're speaking.
Okay.
Right, Anya. Examples of syntactic devices in James's poem.
Well, there is an inversion. Come autumn and its leaves will turn to flame. The way he split the sentence, like breath growing short, then the next line is just uncomfortable, and this is repeated several times. What I must do is live to see that. Also, there is. Sorry?
I didn't say a word.
Sorry, I just. Also, there is this emphasis through elliptical sentences, like this. You feel the drain of energy, but thought inside remain. Period. Enhanced, in fact, as a separate sentence, but it's technically it's elliptical. There is also some kind of a missing predicate. Is it still a word, predicate? That you don't use that much anymore. That you use the structure.
No, that's true. But that's the thorny issue of English education. Currently, the English education system is reverting back to predicates, not in the universities but in the schools, because the very old-fashioned education minister decided that we all needed to be taught English grammar according to Latin models, which I think personally is crazy. But so I understand what a predicate is.
Does it come from ancient
I would never use
Romans?
it myself.
There are some missing here, like even more lavish as dusk descends, this glistening illuminates the air. I think there is some part missing in this sentence.
So what do you add if you're going to turn it into prose?
Well, so now I start doubting this, though, but it becomes ever more lavish as the dusk descends. This glistening illuminates the air. But probably, yeah, this glistening is more lavish, so this is just an inverted word order, probably.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Because the subject of the ever more lavish refers to the glistening. So if you're going to put it in normal, it reads it's this glistening illuminates the air, comma, ever more lavish as the dusk descends, which is, and becomes ever more lavish as the dusk descends, if you're going to turn it into prose.
But the fifth stanza, filling double doors to bathe my eyes. I am filling double doors. This sentence I don't quite. I mean, I understand and I see what double doors he's talking about. To bathe my eyes is also clear, but filling double doors, this structure, like the verb, not finite form instead of the finite verb.
So, you know what is filling the double doors? What's the subject?
The tree. No. So it's a final flood of colors.
Yeah.
So it's just a participial something at the beginning of the sentence. Yeah. And
okay, so this is just.
It's inversion again.
Well then, yeah, inversion, ellipses, and this is, and the split sentence. I think those are also.
He's very fond of splitting his sentences, isn't he?
Yeah.
If we look at the last two lines, what first word of the in the book stanza, the word burned by my vision. What's that refer to? What's being burned?
mind.
As my mind dies, burned. It is burned.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He does that a lot. He takes what in the English teaching world you call a dummy subject. Subject it is. You know, the sentence structure where you have pronoun, verb to be, plus adjective. It is burned. And he does not. He elides or removes the dummy subject and the verb to be because you don't need it. It's only there for grammatical purposes, and he doesn't need grammar. He's a poet.
Yeah, but I just thought that.
So he's deliberative. Go on.
I thought that all those features which Anya has mentioned, they would be the same in just a literary text, not a poem. Yeah, so it's not only. So the syntax is compressed, but it only works in tandem with the rhythm and with the density of the language of evaluation and language of comparison, so to say. Yeah, so and it all makes it a poem, and also his statement that there is a poem, that it is a poem. Yeah, because sometimes you just I like this very much. There was some time ago. There was a literary evening, yeah, and one guest asked a question, and it was about minimalistic poetry, Russian minimalistic poetry. And the question was,
Yeah.
and how do you know that it's a poem? Yeah, and the person
Because the
who
poet
answered,
says so.
yes, he said that he quoted, he cited another very famous and important poet who said that you need to have courage or maybe audacity to say that it's a poem. Yeah, and that's one thing. Yeah, but of course here. I mean, Japanese maple. It's more conventional in this sense. So you don't need this strong statement that it's a poem, because it's somehow understandable and not very deep inside. There is this Shakespearean sonnet, yeah, and this iambic pentameter, yeah, which is broken and split, yeah, and interrupted, but it is somewhere there, yeah, and especially in those last lines, I thought that is a Birnbaum, a vision of a world that shone so brightly in the last, and then was gone. So maybe not very much, not so many distortions of syntax, but the fact that it's compressed, and so the language of emphasis and comparison and evaluation and compressed syntax, they all work together to help it be a poem, something like this.
Okay. What do you think, Anya?
Yeah, I agree. I just singled out those. Well, I always, I told you I take my joy in, taking everything apart, looking at the way it's done. What is wrong? I know it's pretty wrong.
Why do you think it's wrong? No.
Yeah, it is interesting. I like it, but it's not the right approach to poetry after all, because you need to, embrace the whole thing. Just enjoy it, and so I singled out the syntactic part, because of course I didn't mention what Lena just mentioned.
But the question was about syntax. I mean, Wayne's question was about syntax, so you are right.
Yeah, so I was very technical about this part, so very non-poetic at all.
And so, Wayne, can you say that you could see all the same syntactic devices in a piece of prose?
You can sometimes. If you take rhetorical prose, particularly, you take Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, something like that. Or you take Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. There are times in prose when syntactic devices are used to very powerful effect, rhetorically. Poetry, it's a form of rhetoric, isn't it?
In terms of syntax, yes.
It's made for an audience. Yeah, I'm only talking in terms of syntax. I have to say that I was fascinated by the idea that when James was talking about the Shakespearean sonnet, I had never myself thought, I've never particularly looked at Sonnet 129, to realise that it is a simple piece, a simple discursive, well not simple, complex discursive statement set up without metaphor and particular imagery, just a piece of argument, compressed into this form. I found that idea fascinating. Some point when I get back to writing poetry again, working on poetry, I'm going to have a play with that because it just strikes me as being a really interesting exercise. Whether I can achieve anything or not, I have no idea. Because first of all, you have to have something to say. Shakespeare did. But yeah, so, and it struck me as because one of the things about, it's an interrupted sentence with an interrupted thought, one of the things that impressed me about Japanese Maple was the clarity of it. I think the clarity of language in it, despite the fact that the language is quite dense, was something impressed. And to go back to your original question, Leanna, there's the novel by Vikram Seth called An Equal Music.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah, and so I can recommend it to Anya.
It's a wonderful love story. But what's really interesting about it is that it's prose, but when you start to analyse the prose, as I did with a group of teachers once, you discover that it's almost poetic in the way he uses syntax in it. He fractures sentences and inverts them and elides things and so on. It's very, very compelling use of language. But he was a poet before because his first novel was written in rhyming couplets, Golden Gate. It's a pity that he's moved away from it. But, he's a real Vikram Seth.
Yes, it's really very beautiful, and if I find it at home, I will bring it to you. But of course, you can just buy it on Amazon.
Excuse me. It is a beautiful book. So his blockbuster novel. He wrote a novel which was basically in 3 parts, and it's called A Suitable Boy.
Yeah, no,
And
haven't read this one.
It's a fabulous book. It's very simple. It's what happens when a Muslim boy falls in love with a Hindu girl. That's the basic area of discussion. But he rambles. I know that this is probably something that you would be reluctant to hear, but I think it has the same quality of writing as War and Peace. It's not about
War and Peace. Okay.
Yeah. Or Middlemarch, if you want to use an English equivalent. He portrayed.
Thank you for reminding me about it, because I think I should just read it. Yeah, because I liked Unequal Music very much. Yeah.
Right. Question number 5 was Leanna's question, which means you can read it now that you've got it, Anya. So, Leanna, if you can do the honours.
Yeah, okay. So the question was, what do you think is the evidence of James's identification of a different kind of building block here? Yeah, but yes, now we need previous word which he says about Plath. It's not what Plath says, but in the, I don't know how you pronounce the next word, in the swing with which he said
hang on. Suave.
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 Suave. Swing with which she said it.
Okay. Do you know what suave means?
No, but I infer the meaning.
Okay. And do you know what suave means?
No, and I'm failing to find the copy
So-
of your.
The document is applying James to James, yeah, and it's on the so after task number 4, I've got task number 5. Okay, page 42. Read the text of "Cut" by Sylvia Plath, in which
But you didn't send it to me.
yes, I did, yeah,
Via mail.
yes, by mail.
Well, something's over.
Okay. Let's
It
check.
ain't arrived. Can you resend, Leona?
Yeah, I forwarded.
I would resend it. I would resend it, but I would send it, but it's going to take me 5 minutes to find it because my computer automatically goes to cloud, so I have to then reset it to go from disk, and that
Okay.
takes time.
Right, Anya, it was forwarded from Tamash Kishbali. Okay, can you see it? And there were 3 documents, and one of them is applying James to James. Okay, I'm sending it again.
So now I have it.
Okay.
Ah,
Oh
That's
no,
good.
it's it's your version again.
so read the text of "Cut" by Plath, in which she seems to celebrate slicing off the end of her thumb with a sharp knife. James focuses on the highlighted line areas, which are kamikaze men, the stain on your gauze, Ku Klux Klan babushka. And what Leona was reading, it's not what Plath said, but the suave swing with which he said it. Suave here, sort of cool, sophisticated. Interestingly, in normal usage, suave is negative in English. I don't think James means it to be negative here, but suave in standard English has a sense of being a little bit too sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Like Gatsby in The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
So go on then.
Yeah. So can you see it, Anya? Yeah. So the lines about the kamikaze men, terrible in their content, coast blissfully along like cool jazz. You are getting
In this.
okay.
Sorry.
Right. In this, you are getting close to another kind of building block that is set apart from the semantic building block, to a building block constituted by the propulsion of a line. What do you think is the evidence of James's identification of a different kind of building block here? That's, to be honest, I didn't understand the question.
Okay, you didn't.
No.
Okay, fair enough. What he's saying is, to be honest, I don't agree with his analysis of the Plath poem. I think there are much better examples in his own poem. There are different kinds of building block within a poem. You have the building block which it consists of metaphor or imagery.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You have the building block which is syntactical.
Okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Something like
Yes, like
breath grown short is just uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
Then you have the building block where the position in the line, the energy in the line moves into the next line. And it's not just syntax, it's the sort of whole force of the idea. It takes you beyond the end of the line, looking for completion. When you read it, you're looking for the end of the sentence, if you like.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So, for instance, let's give you an example. A car was running down the road, and the young man jumped out. Now, there's a propulsion in that language which requires us as listeners, readers, we want to know more. Now, is he going to jump out to wave it down? Is he going to jump out in front of it? What's he going, because it stopped before it should. And often with lines in verse, they stop before they should and they run over into the next line or into the next verse. I only talked about how a link between verses earlier, which is a very good example of that sort of propulsive unit. So let's look for examples. So if we look in 1, 2, 3, 4, stanza 4, what I must do is live to see that. That will end the game for me. And life continues all the same. So that will end the game for me. That's what I think he's talking about here when he talks about a propulsive unit. Because the for me is key.
Okay.
It's not in the game in general, it's ending it for me. Though life continues all the same. So you not only have the forward movement to it ending life for me, but then you have the counter. The next bit is the sort of counter, which is that there is something else going on that's bigger than me.
Yes, I understand, but isn't it like coherence and cohesion? Why would you talk about it apart from syntax and lexis and everything else? Yeah, it's just, yes, of course there is, yeah, well, but you need words and you need syntax, and you need all these
he's not saying
devices.
words and syntax aren't important.
Yeah.
You do need those underneath, but he's saying that in terms of energy, there's a different kind of building block. That's what I think he's saying.
Well, just maybe.
And he could be wrong.
Maybe it's just more important than syntax.
Sorry, say that again. It's more
Yeah,
important.
okay. I just thought that maybe it's more important than syntax and everything else and metaphor. Why would it be for him number 3 interesting?
I don't know.
Yeah,
You'd have to ask him.
Yes, so because this is what he says.
If you ever meet him, I will ask him, I promise.
Okay.
So, what do you think is the evidence for his identification of a different kind of building block here? basically, does he use it? Does he use this kind of building block in his own things? That's what the second question's ask. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, so it's just in plus lines. Yeah, I have taken a pill to kill. Right. So it doesn't make much sense without the following lines. Yeah, and of course it creates a kind of suspense. I've taken a pill to kill who or what. But
Yes.
everything else,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Yeah, well, because they are put here randomly on this fact that they are that it's just idiosyncratic. It works much better than this propulsion explanation. I mean, in the highlighted lines, yeah, the thin papery feeling, and so on. And as for his poem, at the beginning, because it's more about this subtle energy, no, you can't stop it. You can't stop waiting for what's going to be next. But
I think, if I can interrupt, if we go back to the very first question that I asked, which is all about moments. I think in James's kind of view of how poetry works, it seems to me that he says that poems are full of vivid moments of language and thought. And what, to some extent, raises a poem from a series of separate brilliant moments is the ability of a poet to take some of these moments and join them into a block, a building block, if you like, to use his language, where you build up an effect throughout the poem, so that the reader goes on a journey from moment to moment, but also you get maybe 2 or 3 moments that are sort of built together and then push you towards the next 2 or 3 moments, and that somehow that the overall effect of the poem is that it is a creation at a very basic level of the brilliant moment. That the next step up is the building blocks, the joined together moments, and then the final structure is the poem as a whole. I think that's, if one was going to develop a theory of what James's view of what makes a poem special and worth looking at, it is that kind of approach. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, he said modestly. Excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, it's very,
But it's a very nebulous kind of classification. That actually what one would want to do is to work with him and say to him, okay, right, take Japanese maple, identify the building blocks in it, identify the moments, identify the building blocks. for yourself, and we would then be able to see whether his theory, view, works. I think something like, do you know the poem by John Keats, Ode to Autumn?
Kind of know, but not by heart, of course.
Well, I think it probably works in that poem. And the opening line of it is season of mists and mellow fruitfulness.
Just a second. I'm sorry. I need to take the lead and connect it with the plug.
Elsewhere. Yeah. Okay. Right, Anya, what do you think?
Well, I don't quite understand this building block situation, and I do understand the way lines are put together brilliantly and the way they connect. What I find difficult is the connection of the stanzas. Well, I mean, they have more subtle connections to them than the lines with one stanza. Like the third one and the fourth one, how they interact is beyond my time, but now I take my share, and the next line starts with the daughter's choice. So my share of life, right? My daughter is my part of my share. So, well, I know this is very, this is coming out of my way, because I think my share is actually connected to something different, like the remaining time. I will take the share of the remaining time, the enjoyment, the things I still can percept, but also the way the two lines connect.
I don't think there is a connection. I think what you get there is, the proper word is trope. There is a sudden shift, sudden change, an introduction of something completely new. In a sense, right up to this point, everything, the first three verses, the first three stanzas, are leading up to that. Up to that line, aren't they? He's basically setting the context, and then suddenly you have this glorious tree, which he's not just noticed, he's leading us to understand its importance in his life at that time. So, and the first three verses, I find myself wondering whether he started with the tree or whether he actually started with a meditation on his forthcoming death. His poems take a long time to write, and I kind of get the feeling that maybe he wrote the first three verses, and then, like the man from Pollock who interrupted Coleridge when he was writing Kubla Khan. the daughter comes in with this tree, or at some point in the writing grade, she brought the tree, and the tree suddenly brought in focus for him what he's talking about in the first three verses. Because quite clearly there isn't a link, there isn't a pulse of energy joining the tree to the three sentences before it. I think that sentence stands separate. But I might be wrong.
And maybe without this fourth stanza, it would work perfectly well, but it would be too abstract, yeah. So I take my and there wouldn't be any particular here, yeah. So this tree.
The tree gives.
It reinforces this feeling of this longish moment, yeah, lingering, of this lingering and of a change, yeah, and there is something behind the door, something particular which he is looking at.
Yeah, yes. But I also think that the poem becomes less contemplative in the last two verses and more, if you like, experiential. What I must do, because it gives him something really quite specific. What I must do is live to see this, see that.
Mm-hmm.
He now has a goal, and he has the goal. If you look at the energy in the previous verses, there's a joy in the moment, or an enjoyment of the moment, if you would, a celebration of. But he's facing an unspecific moment of death. Your death near now is of an easy sort, so it's coming, but it's undetermined. And then the tree comes in, and it gives him a point. I must fight for life until the tree is in its full autumn bloom, autumn glory. And then, in a sense, I will live my life to the full, and everything will be over, and it's okay for me to go. So I have a goal to see me. Yeah, I mean, when do you think the poem was written? What time of year?
Spring.
Huh? Can't hear you.
I said she thought that that was written in spring.
I think so because the tree is pale, maybe in the spring or in the summer.
Early spring, before the colours have deepened in the leaves. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But I think the propulsive energy of the poem gathers speed. Come autumn and its leaves will turn to flame, what I must do is live to see that. That will end the game for me, though. Life continues all the same, filling double doors to bathe my eyes. A final flood of colours will live on as my mind dies, burned on my vision of a world that shone so brightly at the last, and then was gone. So he's enjoying the beauty in verse 2, but in verse 3 and 4, he's not, because he hasn't got there yet. He's imagining the beauty.
Mhm.
Um, I think he has something when he talks about the propulsive, or what I'm calling the propulsive unit. I'm not sure yet I understand enough about what he means by it to A, identify it, and B, identify how it functions. But that is something that's worth thinking about.
Yes, yeah.
And
Well,
with
it kind of if it's not a narrative, not exactly. Why would it continue? Why can't you stop it at any point? Yeah, what makes it move on? Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. We come to question 6. One of Edgar's favourite strategies, he's talking about a poet called Edgar, is to set up, this is Anya's, to set up an area of public property, as it were, before moving into a relationship, spreading inward from the world. So he identifies the quality in a poet who says, here's the general, it's specific. How far is James' focus in Japanese maple in line with Edgar's strategy? Or does he have a trouble? So is he going from general to specific or from specific to general?
Well, I think the latter. He goes from personal outwards to the general, because he starts. Well, again, technically, is to be very, down to earth. He's talking to himself.
Yeah.
He has this inner dialogue, which is always very personal. Well, then it spreads to his to more physical details, like double doors, lotus present, tree, autumn, and then to the very last, the one I talked about before, the ending of the world as he sees it, the moment of, the moment when it all disappears, which is a very it's not very general. It's also very personal, but at the same time, it's a very general idea, which is multiple times is brought up in all kinds of art, poetry, prose.
Yeah, Leonard, do you agree?
I think it's all rather personal, but he moves from more detached than to less detached down and back. So he deviates and moves between these two modes. This is what I thought. So, for example, so my daughter's choice, and then what I must do is live to see that. So this sounds, yes. So this sounds more involved, like and in other parts he might be more detached. Sounds
Well,
more
if you
detached.
then continue on to the second the last sentence in that stanza, that will end the game for me. Very personal. The
So
life continues all the
yes,
same.
yes, yeah.
It suddenly zooms out
Run the
to
game
the general world.
For me, yeah, their life continues all the same, yeah.
So the pulse of life goes on in the background. The foreground is him, but in the background there is life in general. And about the effect of the last 4 words of the poem, do you think those are general or personal?
So Bradley at the last, and then what got? Yeah, I think it's so the last just the last part is very personal, and it is a very personal image, although almost medical, of what happens. Yeah, it is just, maybe it's just my association, it's not on the poem. Yeah, but right, they say that at your last moment your brain works 100%. There are areas which are not involved until you start dying, until the agony. Yeah, so it's like this outburst, this explosion, when you see everything for the last time, right? Something like this. It should be very personal, although kind of, so the tone is very neutral, but it makes it even more personal. What do you think?
I think that was a question to you, Annie.
I agree with Lena.
Forgive me, I'm sneezing. My legs are cold. Well, I'll just ask you a question. Why do you think he uses the past tense in the second to last word? Why does he say, and then was gone, instead of then is gone?
So that's the propulsive energy. Yeah. So he will die, and his mind will die, but he will still be there somehow when the world is done.
Isn't that somebody else looking, us as the reader perhaps, looking at that moment? He had that moment and then was gone. I'm just asking because that's what it says to me. Is that it
Seems like this.
it widens out to the general. It's somebody observing. He had this glorious last moment and then he was gone. So it goes, at the end it goes back to him because he no more. He can't be personal, it's dead. It's gone.
Maybe it's personal, but in a different sense of the word. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll need to check. Yeah.
I think we do need to check. Why
Yes.
does he use past tense then? If you want to leave it as personal, it would be, because this is, I say this because when I write poetry, and if I was writing this one, I've got burned by my vision of a world that's shone, so right at the last, and then is gone. That's what I would write. Because that would be my personal experience.
Yeah.
And anticipated, of course, because he's still alive, even now, some 3 years later. But, so he says, and then was gone. That changes it completely. It is the sense of awareness of the passing of James. Right. Let's have a quick look at 7. Okay, 7 was Lena's. I'm still trying to figure out just how the propulsive energy that drive a line of poetry joins up with the binding energy that holds a poem together. The propulsive drives forward, binding holds together. It seems to me that they are, in a sense, contrapuntal forces, counteracting forces. What idea forms the binding energy that holds Jake and Mary together? And how do individual lives achieve an internal propulsive energy? Explain how you think they do that between any two lines. That, what idea forms whole part together. Yeah.
I'm a bit lost here because I think these are more or less the same questions we have discussed already. I mean, it's not because I don't want to talk any longer. I just think that it's all about the same. Yeah. So the idea of staying a bit longer. Yeah, and it's in this sense the poem is kind of mimetic because although each line maybe or maybe not heavy enough to be uh, to be complete in itself, yeah, he needs to continue, and he does it. He continues. So he works. So it's a performative kind of work. So he wants to continue and he continues. If the question is about this.
Tanya, what do you think?
Yeah, also those questions somehow some in common. So I don't actually.
Okay.
But I didn't know that the propulsive energy, this is a very Pasternak-esque idea.
Okay.
This is a very concept, and it's something that he always talked about, that's for sure. So I'm at a loss here, because I can't figure it out with Pasternak either. So.
Okay. So maybe this is an area to explore in the future.
Yes,
Choose
maybe.
another poem
Yes.
and find whether we can define this propulsive energy. I think it's a sense within the poet of the poem going forward to its end, essentially, and how he or she does that. And I'm reminded of lines from Eliot, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, not with a bang but a limbo. There's a terrific propulsive energy in the repetition of those lines. And then the contrast, it's building up to bang, and then the contrast with which I think is a clear example of how that works. Whether it works here or not, I don't know.
And
I just thought I'd ask a question and see what you came up with as answers. It doesn't necessarily mean to say I know the answers. I don't necessarily. So I'll leave you with the problem. Right, and the last question was Lena's. No, that was Anna's. Conquest is a different poet, states that shifting patterns of light are like the complex, simple movements of great verse. James comments on this. Combined into a single oxymoronic phase, the two words simple and complex not only collide, they explode. Once they touch and go off, each is riddled with the other's particular shrapnel. You can't have one without the other. How valid is this view of what Conquest says? Can you find examples in Japanese maple where words collide in this way? Can you say that the shards of shrapnel that impact upon each other in phrases you've chosen? What are the shards? So, examples of words that collide and explode against each other.
Well, it occurred to me now after everything we've talked about that there are three layers to this simple complexity or complex simplicity. So the first one is the way we talked about the energies that collide. the fading out in
Yeah.
grass. So, am I heard? Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So this, it's images. Then a lower layer, is for instance the slide about descending and the glistening illumination in the air, the dusk being both live metaphor or just the literal dusk.
Yeah.
And the lower layer to this, like the very simple one, is just the colliding of two something typical and simple, and also more pathos and something very poetic. For instance, the line "feeling double doors to bathe my eyes." Well, I think that bathing my eyes is a very poetic line, while the double doors just are very physical and the part of his house, and a very physical detail of the poem, which are both here in one line.
Fair enough. What do you think, Jim?
I think it's a good example, that, and we talk about doors and eyes. You have this, when you read it, you have this complex vision of eyes opening and closing, and maybe in a strange manner like this also, and ways, so
It's
a
bathe
strange.
here. What's the sense of the word bathe? If they bathe his eyes, is this?
With light,
What's the feeling? Yes, lots of light. That's true. But think in terms of health. What is bathing associated with?
Something healthy.
If you bathe a wound, what do you do?
Yeah, so you cure it.
Sorry?
You apply some treatment to it.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
proper,
So
and
it has
it's
a
kind.
soothing, healing impact on the word.
Yeah.
That's why he could say flood my eyes, just overwhelm, but he chooses the word bathe.
Yes, and then there is
That's really...
an effect between bathe and burn. Yeah. So kind of contradiction and explosion. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good example also is, if you follow on from that, as my mind dies, burned by my vision. He uses the metaphor of shrapnel, and I think the mind dying and the sort of explosion of burning, there is a collision of energies, which I think is a very good, a really powerful example of what Conquest was talking, James are talking about. Complex simplicity, or contrasting complexities. And also, the if you like, shone and gone. The world had shone and now it's gone. I think there's a collision there. Right, that brings us to the end of those worksheets. How's the exercise productive for you?
Sorry?
Yeah, and very enjoyable. Inspiring.
Has the exercise been productive?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah. Because.
Well, the underlying question is, dost thou, but thou as two of you, wish to repeat it, would you like to do this again?
Yes, of course, but not the same poem or not the same tasks.
Well, of course not. No, that would not work. That would be incredibly boring.
Yeah. Good.
So-
were you thinking about more?
Well, I'm just wondering about, do you want to do it again? That's the first question. Second would be approximately when. Can't really be until November, because I won't be able to get the work done before I go to Uzbekistan. I'm away until the end of October. So I would, sort of in terms of a timetable, I would see me working through November to produce the worksheets and do the necessary analysis, with maybe a session sometime in December.
Yes, yeah.
So
And if we could possibly do it in the first part of December, okay?
I don't know, probably. It's going to depend. The next question is what do you want to use in the way of a verse, poem?
And what do you want?
I don't know any. I think it's not up to me to choose.
Why not?
Because everything. Well, the more unexpected, the better.
Well, maybe something from Australia or New Zealand again. What do you think?
I'm up for anything.
Okay, I'll have to do some thinking. I'm not sure. James has written a lot of poems, so we could use another one of his. Because he wrote this book, which is Sentenced to Life, and he's written a sequel to it, which is called what's it called? What over time?
Something injuries, right?
Time of injury.
Yeah, injuries.
Or injury time.
I can't.
Every time.
What do you call that period in a game of football after the game is over? Extra time. Extra time. I think he calls it extra time because he didn't expect to have died. He expected to have died, and then he didn't. And he's always got this slightly sardonic view of the world, kind of. So he writes this poem and he's sort of reconciled himself to going. And then he writes another whole book full of poems about not going. Yet. which he finds quite amusing. And he's not totally sad about. I'm wondering about choosing something by... I'm wondering about Michael Donaghy, whose poetry is new to me, and is very, very interesting.
And you started thinking about him because of James, yeah? So it was a prompt from James to start thinking about Donaghy, or was it?
Yes, yeah. James started in his book, in his book of analysis. James talks about, in Poetry Notebook, James talks about Donaghy, who's a UK poet. He's dead, he's now dead, died in 2004. But James has a lot of time for him, and when I started looking into his verse, it's interesting. And He's written his own. So he wrote a series of lectures about poetry. Because they still exist. So I'm wondering about choosing something from him. I think it'll be quite a lot more opaque than James, because I don't think James is a particularly difficult poet. I mean, there's a lot there. So at a superficial level, you get to it quite quickly.
Yeah,
Do you disagree?
Yeah. So difficulty is not the main thing about poetry.
Yeah. The other thing you could do, we could do, I suppose, but I don't write structured verse. I tend to write in free verse. Just look at something that I've done.
Yes, of course, because we wanted to.
Sorry? What did you say?
No,
I didn't hear what you said.
Never mind.
Okay. So maybe what I'll do is I'll have a look around and I'll choose 2 or 3 verse poems and I'll send them to you, and you can then have a discussion with you and choose which one to work on.
Okay.
I prefer not to work on Jory Gray because I find her stuff is I suppose too difficult is the cop-out way. I think you have to work very hard to get a sense of what she's talking about. I have to work very hard. I don't know about you guys, but I have to work very hard to get any sense of what she's talking about. And I think I would rather at this stage we look at poetry which is a bit more accessible before we tackle stuff which is less accessible. And she's a poetess who seems to revel a little bit in the mystery, you know. Like that playwright said to me, I don't know what it means, darling, I only wrote it. And I have a feeling that Jory Graham kind of does that.
Well,
you sort out what it means.
Yeah, it's history anyway. Yeah, it was long ago.
Right, so is that a way forward for me? I'll try to find by the end of next week before I go to Uzbekistan, or very shortly after I come back.
Yes, of course, yeah. So
3 poems, which I send both of you, and then you can then choose which one you want to work from.
Yep.
Does that work?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then we apply. I mean, I don't guarantee that I won't apply the same method, same kind of task as I did this one.
No, of course not. Yeah, no, but our method is keeping you working.
Oh, thanks very much. Right. Okay. So this conference call seems to have worked reasonably well.
Yes, it has. And then after that, we'll see what we have recorded. Yeah, and how much sense it makes. Yeah, I mean being recorded.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So well done, Anya, for setting it up. Congratulations. I wouldn't have known how to do it, so your skill with the technology is ace. Well done.
It is not my skill, it's my husband.
All right. Well done, husband.
Yes, I will let you know. Thank you.
And I'm sure what he said was, well, why don't you do a conference call? It's ever so easy. You just do this, this, and this, and it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, that's a sort of male way of dealing with things.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you to him particularly, because it has worked very well, I think, by and large. I mean, Skype is Skype, so you don't always get the quality sound you want, but it's been very clear. Okay, so no, you're very welcome. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good session.
It was great and inspiring. And thank you to Lena for arranging everything, and I don't know, it was great. I just, it bathed my eyes and my all kinds of senses I have, so it was great.
Okay, thanks to everybody. Thanks.